Hey, everybody, welcome. It's so great to have all of you tune us in and turn us on. Joining me here today is my fabulous, fabulous co-host and the show right at her fingertips. Her message is Live the Good Life Show. And that is Sabrina Wright. This is about connecting your physical and spiritual self. You know, when I think about this and I think about the work that Sabrina does, I'm struck by, as I talked about last show, is I'm struck by the pathway that she has taken, her training, certifications, 15 years, integrative, working with integrative physicians and surgeons and naturopaths and acupuncturists, it goes on. But in the end, we look at this as somebody that has experience, education, teaches, works with clients, and looks at the whole person care, body, mind, spirit. And Live the Good Life show with Sabrina is about that. It's how to connect that physical and spiritual self. It's how to make sure we get the big picture, the little picture, and every picture in between. Today, she's joining us to bring the message of value and worth. And the question really is, do you actually believe that you are designed for dignity? Do you know that? Can you feel it? Can you breathe it? Sabrina, it's great to have you.
Thank you, Dr. Pat. It's really exciting to be here today. This message is really near and dear to my heart. And when in my studies, when I was at a place where I personally was challenged on a number of different levels, when I went back to understand just foundationally who I was, what I was, how valued I was, and how to connect to be better and healthier.
Yeah.
It made a huge shift in my paradigm and the way that I operate just in the world. It was pretty remarkable.
What was it like? Let's just talk about it from an energy perspective. Dr. Vic talks about the energy paradigm. And, I'm struck by what you just shared about being over here and being at that, and then being over here now and being at that. I mean, what did the shift look like? I mean, if I had a before and after picture up in front of me, what would that look like?
I'd have boxing gloves on and I'd be working my way out of a paper bag.
That's it.
And typically that is the struggle, because what happens in our lives is we're challenged on a number of different levels, right?
Yeah.
And what our beliefs are, or what our past experiences have been, and how they've created or how they've formed where we are and how we think and operate when we're challenged, or when we have a difficult relationship, or when we are in a situation where we have to make a choice between A or B. We struggle with that.
Yeah.
We are not capable of just immediate decisions. We have to interpret the direction we're going. We have to take a look at, if I make this decision, then what is that going to bring ultimately into fruition? If I don't make that decision and I choose over here, am I going to have greater peace? Is this the direction and so we're constantly trying to navigate life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's no question about it. And, some days the water is like in Waikiki, right? If you ever been to Waikiki in Hawaii, I mean, that's my degree of getting out there on a floaty. That water is really calm. The other hand, if you want to go to the North Shore and you want to be out there, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And you're on the North Shore and you are thinking to yourself, man, surf's up, and you're looking at some gigantic wave. But either way, Either way, tiny, no waves, big waves, we have to learn how to navigate.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to think about on the other side, right?
Yeah.
We we become our best selves and we grow through struggle, through challenge, and kind of like a butterfly, right? It starts out in a cocoon. And part of the process is they have to be in there for a particular time. And once they're to the stage where it's now to come out and be that beautiful butterfly, it's got to struggle to get out of that cocoon. However, it's in that struggle that they create the strength of those magnificent wings that they're developing. If they were to be assisted through that struggle and released too early, they couldn't fly. They
Mm.
wouldn't be their magnificent self. So it's in that struggle that we get stronger, that we become more refined, and we really develop.
But when you think about this, right, and you're taking a look at A, B, C, and D, and I could see why this topic for you is like super, how should I say it, important. It is important. Value and worth. Value and worth. These are things that people struggle with, and, all of the studies that you pick up and read, Sabrina, almost all of them really talk about this in terms of women, and that's a generalization, but it is a generalization that have been studied and researched, right?
Yes.
All sorts of academic, dialogue about it, but value and worth, people look at those 2 words and they think they are the same. But you're talking about this idea to begin with, before we get into that, is we're looking at the belief, the underpinning around all of that. Is that where the confusion is?
I do believe so. Last time we got together, we talked about, for you and I, our day starts with a spiritual component, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And we have our non-negotiables to set
yeah,
ourselves up and our investment time.
yeah,
Well, what people don't understand is their spiritual wellness is that internal world. It's that foundation that everything else is built upon and everything else grows. And if that's not secure, then what happens is you're kind of like a willow in the wind, and
mhm,
you're going this way, or this particular situation affects you that way, or someone speaking to you in a derogatory tone moves you another way. And what happens is you have a tendency then to respond to those um, situations and those factors in different ways. If you've got a really strong understanding of who you are as an individual,
right.
right? If what your value is as an individual, what are your gifts, your talents, and that you are worth far more than anything that anybody says, any situation that you're in that maybe could have gone a little better,
Yeah.
any relationship or work product that you're working in, you are worth far more than all of that, right?
Yeah,
So at that point, to understand what your value and worth is, it's taking a look internally, and it's having an understanding and a realization of how you see yourself. Really, it starts there. What are you accepting of yourself? How do you show up in the world? What do you believe? What are your non-negotiables? What are you great at? What are your weaknesses? I mean, be realistic about what you've got going on, and be understanding that component for you as an individual then gives you more confidence and assures us a stronger foundation, so that we're able to really bring our best self into situations, relationships, and into the world, because we're all brought together and we're here for a purpose, right?
Yeah. But it's really interesting the way this either shows up or doesn't show up. And a lot of times, and this is why I'm so glad you're talking about this today, because, when we come back from break, we're going to talk about value and worth. And we're going to talk about it from a very specific paradigm. You're going to walk us through this, right?
Mhm.
But here's an interesting observation I have of myself. Um, it's a silly little thing. My lease is up for my car. I know what I want. I want the same car. I want the same color. I have a Nissan Rogue SUV, uh, orange. It's metallic orange. I love it. You don't see a lot of them on the road. It makes me smile. I just want, as I return this, I want the same thing. And I think I'm naive at some level. And so I talked to the dealer, right? And he is 99.9% almost successful talking me out of it because he couldn't find one.
Okay.
There's an upgrade in Vancouver here, down south, Washington State.
My neighborhood.
Exactly. So there is one down there. And but you see, I had this belief about this, right? I mean, if I went through the list of things that went through my mind in almost making a decision that I didn't want to make, it really gets underneath what you're talking about. And, today I had an epiphany. When we come back, we're going to talk about the epiphanies that are available to everybody listening to this. And you may not think that a decision point about a car is that relevant to this
Oh, it is.
until you think about what you're willing to give up
Mhm.
because somebody else's value and perspective about you or what you want doesn't match yours. And that's what Sabrina is going to talk about when we come back. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back. That's what I'm talking about. So great to have all of you tune us in, turn us on. And, for those of you out there, really thrilled to be featuring Sabrina Wright, Live the Good Life. And this is, like part of her passion, though. And it's really what she talked about earlier. It's how do you navigate? How do you navigate the waters of your life? And, for Sabrina, this is about helping people understand the connection between the physical and spiritual self. And boy, I'll tell you, that is a body of work for me that has been taking a lifetime. Sabrina, before we really get deep diving over here on and worth, how do people find out more about you? How do they work with you? All of the above.
All the above. I am socially, you can connect with me socially. You can check out my Facebook page at Sabrina A. Wright profile, professional profile, public figure. You can connect with me on the Right Balance Facebook page, which is my business. You can find me at www.sabrinaiswright.com. And you can reach out and connect via email, the right balance one@gmail.com.
And spell right for everybody.
WRIGHT, exactly.
Yeah. Tricky, right?
It is. It
Did you
is.
get that? Did you get that little thing like tricky, right? Like I said that? No, never mind.
I was tracking.
Oh my gosh, I'm having a moment. I'm not kidding when I talk about value and worth being a lifelong journey for me. They have been. I don't know if they're WWE wrestling tag team, partners, or if they are just part of the journey in life. But value and worth gets at the core of so much of what we do and what we don't do. And, that car story that I was sharing,
Mhm.
it may sound trivial, but what happens to our minds and the swirling that goes on, and, getting to the point where you're on the verge of making a decision that you didn't really want to do because of some underlying belief about something. That's really now getting at the core of this,
Mhm.
right?
It is.
And talking about what this means. Can you give us a picture of what the state of being when value and worth are involved? Give us a picture of what that could look like.
Well, I like to use the analogy of a lump of gold. Okay. So it has a particular value, and it has a worth that is its essence. It's not about anything that it does, it's just the essence of the gold. You can take that gold rock, you can take that lump of gold, and you can melt that down, and you can create something like a doorstop, an ornate, shiny doorstop.
Mm,
It has still the same value, only different function, right?
yeah,
So its essence has not changed,
yeah,
its function has changed.
right.
You can take that ornate doorstop, and again, you can melt that down and you can create, let's say, a gold platter or a tea set, right?
Right.
That gold platter and tea set has now a different function. However, it's from the same lump of gold, still the same value.
Mm.
That is original lump of gold. One more time, if you melt it down, you can create a beautiful ornate necklace. Different essence, same value. We are just like that.
Yeah.
And in the miraculous place that we are as individuals, we bring different
Mm.
talents, different skills, different perspectives, different heart. And many of us have gone through personal challenges,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Many of us
No,
have
no
gone,
kidding.
right?
Yeah.
Many of us have gone through divorce, the loss of family members, abortion, they've been perpetrated upon, and all of those challenges have not diminished their value at all. Sometimes and many times, I think that, and specifically for women, we're in this, we're trying to be the best us that we possibly can be. And so we're constantly looking for examples to create ourselves to reflect
Yeah.
what our
Yeah.
value and worth is. And many of those changes don't really resonate to our hearts. And what happens is we're constantly in a struggle internally.
Yeah. I call it the compromise catalyst.
Oh, I like that. I
Yeah,
like
that's my that's I was going through outlining my book, right, that I'm trying to write.
uh-huh.
Um and and I thought about this thing, what is the catalyst for us to compromise? And you just nailed it, right? You're talking about the thing that will get us to compromise almost every time.
Mhm.
And what you're talking about is that zone of belief that doesn't truly represent who we are, especially about value and worth, right?
Exactly,
Mm.
exactly. And which then takes us on this huge detour, right? Huge detour. And we're set up in situations where now we're at that place where we've got our boxing gloves on and we're trying to get out of the paper bag. And it's like, how did I find myself here? I made this decision over here, had no idea it was going to fast forward. There was going to be this major trajectory into this situation. And it's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And then we start to doubt ourselves because it's that challenge where ultimately to stay in that inner peace zone is we've got to really have a secure understanding of who we are, what we're worth, and what we bring when we show up.
Yeah. Somebody asked me a question not too long ago, but it's directly related to this. And it's almost like I had a little epiphany. When we are born, we are already have put ourselves in the A plus column. Even the tiny newborn baby, right,
Mhm.
doesn't quite understand they're not good enough,
Oh, no.
right? Not in, and you know what I mean,
Yeah.
in the world, right? The messages we get about not being good enough, that is not their sense of it. They're perfectly okay with who they are, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Feed me or I'll cry. And there's no compromise on that. And you see, this is what I love about, having this conversation with you. I have coached hundreds and hundreds of women. You have worked with the same. And the realization that we learn out of the get-go, Sabrina, right? This is what I think that is powerful about your message today, that we learn right out of the gate. I desired this, and hello, I am going to have a loud voice until I manifest what that thing I desire. And we learn that out of the gate. And we learn it not as a bad thing, but it's almost like it's natural. Parents will say, oh, little Jimmy's crying, must want to eat, must need a diaper, right? Then somewhere along the line, somebody says to us, Sabrina, and you're going to have to share this when we come back. Somebody says, Sabrina, you really shouldn't be whining about that thing you desire. How dare you? You really think you're worth it? Oh boy, I'm going to leave it at that. When we come back, that was an energy I just need Sabrina Wright to help out with. Let's take a short break, everybody. We'll be right back with that one. There you go. Thank you, Benny, for that. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Great to have all of you tune us in and turn us on. Yeah, the message today is coming through loud and clear from Sabrina Wright. And, the message that she brings forward in general is live the good life. Let's do it. That's what the show's about. How do you connect with your physical and spiritual self? And that's the body of work she does. It doesn't matter what walk of life you're coming from, what your challenges are. There is a healing that's probably longing to be addressed. And that's the body of work that she has said yes to. We're talking about value and worth today. And we're going to be talking about how do you get from this perspective in your life, what you've come to believe about yourself, which is probably on the edge of chaos, if not even into that when it comes to our belief system. So, how do you get from that to this inner peace, this place where the clarity of what that next indicated thing is right at your fingertips? That's what we're going to talk about next. We're also taking your calls if you like, 1-800-930-2819. But before we do, Sabrina, one more time, if you would tell folks how they can work with you directly.
Absolutely. You can find me at my website, www.sabrinaiswright.com. You can reach out on Facebook. My business page is The Right Balance, or Facebook public figure page, Sabrina A. Wright. And I would encourage you to reach out. Let's continue this dialogue and let's get you scheduled for a 20-minute conversation.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about you. How can I
Yeah.
help you?
Yeah. Because you're worth it. See, this is the thing right now. You know, there is this notion of what we're going through and how hard it is and how difficult it is. But then there's the other part of it, which really literally addresses the fact that you have to really give yourself the gift of care. No matter how you look at it or what you're looking at it from, what perspective is, it is the gift and the gift of care, and that comes in so many different forms, and I know that you address it like that. I know you look at this from a perspective of not everybody is the same. And that's kind of what we're talking about now. I mean, here we are swirling around, and I don't mean physically, but it could be physically. Like, we could be doing that, but even in our minds, you know, swirling around in our minds. You know, there are some things that are happening. We're overwhelmed by thinking about what we're going through right now. We're overwhelmed thinking about George. We're overwhelmed, George Floyd. We're overwhelmed watching that over and over again on television. We don't quite know what our future is going to be about or the future of our kids. But the question really remains, do you believe that you have the ability to step into the path and energy of freedom? And that's what you're talking about here today as well.
Absolutely. We get caught up and we struggle with things in change and in challenge. And we try to figure it out. We try
Yeah.
to connect all the dots so that it makes us more comfortable and we understand. What I find that many people that I work with are looking for is someone who's going to walk with them through those challenges,
Yeah.
not do the work for them, but walk with them,
Yeah.
to be available to listen and actually work out the mechanics of what their thought process is. Many times, if clients are going through a heightened sense of confusion and they don't reach out, what happens is their brain starts to get worrying that much quicker. And then immediately they start to look at themselves and criticize themselves and judge themselves and compare themselves to things that they shouldn't even be considering. And then what happens is their self-care starts to fall to the wayside. It doesn't become important. Their thought processes become, oh gosh,
Yeah. I call it brain fog.
brain fog for one, but their thought processes aren't very clear. They're not very concise.
Right.
And ultimately, it's about going within, taking your inventory. Let's get back to what's real and what's true. What can I control? What can't I control? And focus on what I can control. And I can control me. I can control how I show up. I can control how I respond. I can control even removing myself until I can get to a place where I can figure things out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really important. I think part of self care that we haven't talked about is extending ourselves grace.
Yeah.
There,
Talk about that. Talk about that more, because say that one more time for people that may have missed it.
we don't, part of self care is giving yourself grace. And grace is the space and the room and the place to take however long it takes you to learn something, to take however long it takes you to process, to take however long it is to move forward in a situation or make a decision, or we extend it willfully and easily to other people.
Yeah.
Okay. And we give people the get out of jail free card, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not, no problem, no worries. You know, yeah. So you had to to change this, that, or whatever, but we don't give it to ourselves. We don't give ourselves the get out of jail free card or the space and time to work something out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. I've learned so much from our listeners, that, for me, and I think about how much I've learned from them, and, what the clarity of their ask is all about. And you see, this is so important right now. It is about the ask. What is it about my hesitation to ask the universe, to ask spirit, to ask God, whatever you believe in, what holds me back from a true and authentic request? And 9 times out of 10, and I believe, at least the research that I'm thinking about points to one thing: I don't deserve it.
Right.
Even if we don't say that out loud.
Exactly.
Right.
We're just not worthy of it.
Yeah.
It's an unrealistic desire, right? And yet everything that we desire is God puts those desires in our hearts for us.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not like, I mean, truly.
Yeah, no, I think that we forget that. That's a really good point. When something shows up at our doorstep, and what I mean by doorstep, I don't mean physically, but it could be physically, right? It
Sure.
could be something that comes in the mail. But when something shows up at our doorstep, or let's call it the doorstep of your consciousness, right? When something shows up, even if it sounds like the most absurdly ridiculous gift, right? Or something small, doesn't matter. A lot of times we go to the no of it, right? No, it can't be for me. No, I didn't ask for it. No, I mean, how often have you heard that, that level of denial that we step into?
Heck, I've done it. I do it every once in a
Oh,
while.
I do too.
And a lot of it is when I think about it and I look at it, it's like, oh, well, it's actually the gift, something that my heart has desired, showed up completely in a form that I hadn't even thought of. And so what happens is I don't see it as a gift, right?
Right.
So, for instance, think about love. What does love look like? Right? Everybody
Yeah.
thinks it's hearts and Cupid and the music,
Yeah.
and yet love is when someone cares enough about you to speak the truth to you.
Oh,
Right? And we need that to speak into your life and bring question, have you considered this? Love looks like acts of service that are just automatically thought of, and you wouldn't have even recognized it or realized that it needed to be taken care of.
right.
And then love is a matter of allowing people the grace to work through their stuff without judgment, condemnation, and just say, I'm here for you. I'm at the other end of a phone. I'm next door. I'm available.
Yeah, and you're touching upon something I want to get to right now, as a matter of fact. I have thought about some of the hardest things that I've had to receive in feedback from other people. I was thinking about this last night, and I worked for a woman, Mary Louise Smith, and taught me about accountability in a way that I can't even describe her. But this was back in the day, like when you walked into a room, here was this rather large woman, uh, nails beautiful, ruby red's beautiful, puffing away, chain smoking a cigarette, right? That's back in the day.
Right.
And actually, she actually wouldn't even stop smoking, even when they told her not to stop, right? And this is right. But you walked in there, and I remember the first time she said this to me, Sabrina. I walked in to complain about this or that or something, and she just put up her hand and she said, "Listen, what part of the problem are you?" And I remember the first time that that happened, and I came right back with, "I don't know what you're talking about." And all she kept saying, "Turn your little self, blah, 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 expletives, and walk out of here. Come back in and tell me what part of the problem you were." And that was a lesson that was so important for me to learn in this dialogue, because it got me to stop and reflect on what I valued myself,
Mhm.
right? And to be able to accept feedback, right? That and I'm not talking about criticism and making people feel bad. That's like a whole different deal. That is not what I'm talking about.
Right.
But when somebody thinks enough about you to give you stories about your performance, and this is a work session
Mhm.
setting,
Mhm.
there is an enormous gift in that. But if you don't have a good sense of self and worth and value, there ain't nothing anybody's going to tell you that's not going to make you feel like you are picking on me.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it really is a lost opportunity. And that's what I think we're talking about today. The idea of value and worth are these enormous gifts that allow us to absorb the energy, the information, and the wisdom of the universe. Because if we can't, then it's our will run riot.
And then our emotions fuel everything. I mean, granted, emotions are real, but they're not necessarily based in fact, and they can create a lot of havoc in
Yeah.
our lives, a lot
Yeah.
of havoc. And so
Yeah.
what happens is we're constantly reacting instead of responding.
Yeah.
And we've just totally lost our lives and our situation over to the energy and the emotion. And that's destructive.
Well, there are emotions, and then there's emotional a meltdown. So let's talk about emotions. Emotions are, you feel something so deeply. You lost someone. I was on a call at 7 o'clock this morning, and one of the folks on the call just lost his dad.
Oh,
And so there is an emotion,
sure.
there's grieving associated to it. Um, and sometimes that grief will immobilize us for a period of time. But
Yes.
our nature was not to be immobilized. It's when we start to self implode, it's when we start to create our own pity story. It's when we start to try to justify, either right justify or left justify, about how everybody else is to blame for something. And that was a lesson, that I learned early on. That was a lesson that I learned early on. And I have to tell you, when the teachers show up in your life as many times as they have shown up for this one lesson for me,
Uh-huh.
that must be a life thing that I'm supposed to learn this lifetime.
Right,
Do you
right.
have it? Do you have any of those?
I do quite frequently. And the thing is I'm constantly tested in certain areas, and the tests get a little harder. They look a little different, and yet it's a refining process, definitely a refining process to uh, help make me better,
Yeah,
so much better. And yet it's not without pain
right,
or discomfort.
right,
Truly, truly.
right. It's like Mary Louise said to you. She said, boy, oh boy. She said, You're wasting my time.
Whoa.
She said, "You're wasting my time. I'm trying to tell you something that you need to improve now immediately. I'm trying to tell you that you have to improve this thing." And and she would say to me, "All you need to do is say thank you." And I would just be furious at her until I learned that she thought enough about me
Yes.
to help me not lose my job.
Right. Yeah.
And
And
I
she saw great potential in you, that she wanted you to keep it so that you could grow and get better
exactly,
and move on.
exactly. But my lack of self-worth and value, I learned through her mentorship. I learned it through her mentorship. And that's the message for today as well, Sabrina, isn't it?
It really,
It's yeah. So let's talk about how do people move from here? Because I don't think everybody's going to get to have a Mary Louise Smith. I mean, that woman showed up in my life at a pivotal point. Um, but they can get help from you. They could understand that this journey may be a journey of steps, but it's also a journey of absolute unlimited possibilities. What would you want to say to folks about that? And how do you work with them on this?
I work with clients looking at specific areas that they're struggling with.
Mm,
And we get back to the root cause of whatever the hindrance is. And we start to take an inventory, if you will. And we start to talk about what is true and what is real, and get them to a place where they understand their value and worth, their gifts, their talents, their skill set. And then we talk about, where do you want to go from here? What is it that we're working toward, right? And and then it's a matter of homework, if you will.
yeah,
It's a matter of homework, and then touching back and reviewing what's gone on, celebrating
yeah,
successes, taking a look at some trips, maybe some falls. I don't believe personally that we ever are failures. I believe and talk to people about how we fell short of where we wanted to go, or the way we wanted to look and how we wanted to show up. And then once we identify the fact that we fell short, let's take a reevaluation moment, and how can we do this better?
yeah,
Life really is one big refining journey. We're not going to arrive at 45. We're not going to arrive at 65. Hopefully, we arrive by the time we meet our maker and it's time to be in heaven, right? And we've developed all through that time.
yeah. I'll tell you the greatest lesson that I think I've gotten in this lifetime is I have to be willing. I have to be willing.
Absolutely.
I have to be willing to take a look at why I may or may not value who I am, or take a look at why I have a price tag on my self-worth or worth, and what is the impact of that, right?
Hmm.
Willingness is such a huge part for me today.
Sure. And if you're looking at a challenge and a struggle, have you ever experienced, in your willingness, you didn't have to ultimately go through that challenge? That willingness to learn the lesson, to hear the truth, to make a plan to move forward,
Yeah,
that willingness actually created a shift.
yeah, yeah,
It's when we struggle, we make it more difficult. It's when we struggle and we're stuck with what we see in our mind's eye about how things are supposed to unfold. Um, that, yeah, that the struggle gets even more difficult. And if we are just willing to open the gift in the box that was given and actually see how the gift inside truly is an answer, truly is a gift and satisfies a desire. Oh my gosh. Could you imagine?
I know.
Could you absolutely imagine?
I know. It really goes beyond belief. And that's really the body of work that you're doing. And you know, I'd be remiss if we didn't just end today with saying that this is the pinnacle of bridging the physical with the spiritual. You
Absolutely.
know, it is doing that because both have emotional,
Yep.
both have mental,
Yep.
right? You know,
Mhm.
we're talking about physical, but we're also talking about physical in our own mind.
Mhm.
This is a powerful, powerful message. Thank you so much for today. Last question. What's your personal message? What do you want to leave us with? And also, please give out your website again.
Certainly. My message is that you're worth the work. You're worth having help with the work. You are worth so much more than you realize. So let's schedule a 20-minute conversation and let's talk about your value and your worth.
I
Definitely.
love it.
My website is www.sabrinaiswright.com. Please reach out. Let's schedule a 20-minute conversation. I want to talk to you. I want to hear what you got going on. Give me a shout out there and let's connect.
I love it. Yeah. And again, what you're doing is helping people at a time in life that none of us could have imagined.
Not at all. Not
Thank you.
at all.
Thanks, Sabrina.
Thanks,
Thank you
Dr.
so
Pat.
much. We're going to take a short break here on TTR, but we got more coming up. Thank you, Benny. Thank you, Olivia. And thanks to all of you for tuning us in and turning us on. And one last thing from me to all of you, and it is this. It's a message from Kathy yesterday. Challenging yourself to be a better human being is harder than it sounds. Easy to say, but action speaks louder than words. Challenge yourself to do simple, random acts of kindness. Hold the door. Give up your spot in line to the person behind you with fewer items. Give your seat up to someone who needs it more. This will make you and the other person's heart smile. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.